With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoweh's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful inns for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more. Well, we want to welcome everybody, our friends and allies, to the Exploring More podcast, where we are in a series of talking about being fathered. In this upcoming Father's Day, we thought it'd be a good idea to talk about that. What does it look like to be fathered? What does it look like how to father? And so we're in a 5-part series of being fathered, and this is number 3. I'm with my friends, Tom Benner and Scott Stankiewicz and S.J. Jennings, and we're exploring this together and sharing some stories and some of the good things that God's up to in our lives. In the previous couple episodes, we talked about God's provision, and in the second session, we talked about God's protection and just how critical that is for a father. A father's role in sons' and daughters' lives is provision and protection, often to the degree that the children don't even realize what's going on. You know, they don't know the full extent of what a father is up to and even why. And sometimes it's years later, we were talking about how we saw our fathers providing and protecting us and how God has been fathering us. So we're just going to continue in that conversation. And I thought I would just jump the first question to you men. So if God is fathering us, we're being fathered by God, well, what's an example of in your life in the last day or two, the last week? How's He been fathering you?
Yeah, like so many of us, I hope so many of us have experienced in the past and still now struggle with the discipline of physical fitness. I'll get on that wagon and get off and get back on and get back off again. And it's been a little bit of a challenge for me, and I'm back on it now and really enjoying it. But He's fathering me in these constant whispers of, you've got what it takes, you've got the ability, you've got the know-how, you know this is good for you, I'm here with you. I know it's hard to roll out of bed at 4:30 in the morning or whatever it is, that you have to do to fit that into your schedule, but it's worth it. And so Go forth and be well, And so one of the things, a little thing I decided to do is my last 3 reps of any set I do, I dedicate, to the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. It's just a little thing I do.
Yeah, that's good.
It's been cool.
Yeah, it does seem like in the disciplines of our lives as men, we need fathering. There's things I've put off, things I've walked away from, things I've, honestly, TV's easier.
Yeah. or the phone.
Or work, banging out emails and stuff. But yeah, that's a place that I think God is wanting to father us as men in the disciplines of our lives, eating, sleeping, getting rest. I mean, just the kind of things that the body needs to be kept up. That's good, SJ. Really good.
I used to do reps, lifting weights. Of course, I was a football player, and I used to name my children until I had 7. And you can't do 7 extra reps. I like that, though. I might get the Holy Spirit. Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
That's only 3.
You can always get 3.
Yeah, you can always do 3
more.
Right.
Come on.
7's there. Shelby, Sean, Madison, Leo, Ella, Joy. That's too many. So
Help me get the weight off. I'm done.
It's on my chest.
Yeah.
I get fathered recently here in the last 6 months or so with issues that are on my heart. And when I remember to take them to the Father, He always answers me in such beautiful ways. On the radio, I listen to the Truth Network, and the Bible teachers, what they're talking about will answer my question. SJ sends me emails and the Zoweh,
daily
orientations,
stuff.
And the answers they're right there. If I submit myself to being fathered and ask for them, Father, I need you on this. Father, I'm trying to answer this and do this on my own, and that's not usually going well. Lord, go ahead, father me. And boy, when I get in that posture, I call it the Bose effect. Answers that the same answer starts coming from the radio, from you, Michael, in conversation, from my wife, from my brother. And it's all the same answer, and it's just really wonderful. I kind of smile and look up, and he's like, when you come to me, I can help you out.
Yeah. Well, I love the idea that we're going to take him up on the offer. So even you're looking, you're paying attention. You're counting on him fathering you, and you're looking for where that is coming from and how that's coming. I mean, that for our listeners, that's got to be really kind of ground zero. The first step in being fathered by God is asking, inviting, giving him permission, sharing. I don't know how to do this. I don't know what this looks like. Would you father me here?
Well, so think back to yourself as a 14 or 15 or 18-year-old, you rebelled against fathering. You didn't really want to be fathered.
That's right.
And so I don't think it's an instinctive, narrative to, I want dad father me when I spilled such and such, or I mouthed off to your mom, go ahead and father me, Dad, because fathering usually meant discipline or bringing in line. But as we get older and as we understand what fathering is, and I think having children really
helps.
Expand your definition of fathering. Right. And then you begin to ask, I want to be fathered. And then you look at your father and you evaluate him, the good and the bad. And then fathering just gets a whole lot more serious. Mm-hmm. Being fathered and fathering takes on a whole new dimension when you get past 18 or you have your own family.
Right. That's good. The mileage helps, doesn't it?
Yes.
You need to get through those years, adolescence, when you don't want to be fathered to this place. Because the enemy wants you to believe you're on your own. In those years from 14 to 18, you tried to prove that you could do it on your own. So there is a bit of a natural grade that's moving that way, and then you're confessing or acknowledging. But then you come to this place where you say, I don't want to be alone. I don't want to be on my own. I want help. Oh, that seems to move the heart of God when our hearts move that direction. That's good, Scott.
Well, I was going to say, along the lines of what you both just shared, a big part of our concept of God fathering us does relate to training, teaching you how to do things, helping you see differently. And recently, I'm a business owner. I'm a stonemasonry contractor, and I have two of my youngest sons in business with me. And one of them, the older of the two, he and I, we're sort of similar personalities, strong-willed, and so we sometimes butt heads over issues or approaches. And just last week, we had one of those headbutting sessions kind of, and I was driving home, and I mean, this went on for probably 3, 4, 5 hours, and I was just, my mind was just offended and sort of all this attack kind of thoughts, and all of a sudden I just hear this voice say to the commentary and the narrative that I was telling myself, he said, "Is that so?" And it was just this awakening to, well, you know what? It's really not. Mm-hmm. I mean, what I'm saying, the things, I would never say that to him or to anyone else, but yet this offended, what we call the false self part of us, was just yakking it up. And then I realized that God was teaching me not only by him saying that to me and causing me to evaluate the voice in my head, but I think he was telling me, hey, this is a tool you can use. Ask that question a lot. Mm-hmm. Ask that question when what's going on and what's coming out of you, or at least up inside of you, is very un-Christ-like, very not who you want to be, and to have the smelling salts of that kind of awakening before you go out and do something you're going to regret.
Yeah, or go much further.
Like saying, talking behind somebody's back, or even to their face, and just creating a big rift that never in my heart would I ever want to create with my son, And so I felt like he saved me from going on for days, I mean, who knows how long that stuff can take before it winds down into normalcy and sanity, because
so what's the question state the question again that invaded in your thoughts and in
so? Is that so?
Is that so?
Yeah. Well, is what you're saying true?
Yeah.
Is what your mind is saying right now? These thoughts, are they true?
Doesn't that sound like something a good father would say when you're going off?
Like,
and
Gandalf would say that.
Sit back, cross his leg, puff on his pipe a little bit. Is that so?
Is that so? Really?
It's true.
It ought
it's
not
so
to
good,
be.
Tom.
It ought not to be.
It ought not to be. Yeah.
But there's so much in that, so much training in that, so much. It can happen sooner. You said 3 or 4 days, and that went to 3 or 4 hours. What a great leap to be fathered.
And part of what we've been talking about in our groups and in our coffee time and stuff is a lot of the training that God will do is show us the stuff that we can't see ourselves. Yeah. We have blind spots. We have attitudes. We have just things that seem so normal and so right and so justifiable. And he'll just have this way of showing it to me. And that's why we call it kind of sometimes our little training circle or our dojo. This is what I'm in right now. And so a lot of the training and disciplining is very kind and inviting, but it's not always what you would ask for or sign up for, if you had a choice.
Yeah. You were going to say something? Did you have a thought?
I had one where it was with some of my children, and I wrote a scathing email that was absolutely right. And I sent it to Michael, and he immediately called me and said, "Hey, you didn't send that, did you?" Thank God. And then I sent it to the Lord, and I said, "Lord, I feel so righteous about this, and I was hurt, and so on and so forth, but I'm not going to send it, because at 56, I've learned somewhere along the line, let this marinate."
Slow cooks, marinate. That's good.
And that was 10 days ago. Thank God I didn't send it. I don't feel that way. I understand what I was feeling, but it would not have been appropriate. It would not have been fair, to them, to our relationship, and it would have created a rift, that would have set us back months, years. But that's how strongly I felt about it. But that's how close I was to the edge of the mistake, that I needed Michael to help father me, and then the Lord. Is that so? I'm glad I got out of that, but we skate so close to the edge. Whenever our emotions get that powerful, especially with our children in fathering, boy, you really got to raise the questions and get the curiosity up, because there's probably more easily to make a mistake than there is to handle it
well. Right.
Absolutely.
Well, I got to tell you, when you ask questions so that you can actually give the answer. So this is one of those questions that I was excited about answering, because God, sometimes it's discipline, sometimes it's training, and sometimes it's just sheer gifts.
Yeah.
It's a present. So just in the last 24 hours, I was sitting down with a sandwich, at home, went home to eat, put a sandwich together, and I was the only one home with the dogs, and so I clicked on the TV, looked through the channels, and Braveheart was on. I mean, here my friends are smiling. I mean, that movie means, that film, that story means a ton to me. And so I'm really curious at this point what I'm going to hit and what's going to come on. And it is the scene after Robert the Bruce's betrayal where he comes back up the stairs to his father.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm watching it. I don't want to lose heart. His father talks about betrayal, and they fight for Wallace. They're inspired. Men do that for me because I steal their lands, push them out, starve their families. But he inspires them, and his dad's, this father figure is not really good and has some bad advice, and yet something in the Bruce's heart. He ends that scene with, "I'll never be on the wrong side again." And I'm watching that. I push pause. I mean, I'm feeling the scene, and I realize we're in this podcast series on fathering. The cover of the book and several places in The Heart of a Warrior have references to Braveheart. It just felt like a smooch, a kiss, a hug from God, and a little card, not a big, giant present, but it was big for my heart, like opening a card and reading this. I see you. I love what you're doing. I'm in this. Go get them. It was special. And as I reflect on that film, it really is a story about fathers and sons. There's Wallace and his father, who was killed. Longshanks and his son, who that relationship's awful. And then there's the other men who have fathers, Amish and his father. There's a father-son dynamic in that whole storyline, and being fathered, good fathers and bad fathers. It's a precious, precious story, and God raises that, this in these last day, in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, one of my favorite characters from that film is Argyle. Uncle Argyle, who steps into
surrogate.
Wallace's
the uncle.
dad's
We'll have to
shoes.
remedy that, I guess.
Yeah,
That's right.
Good one. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Mike,
Respond. What? Yeah.
A quick one. This happened just before I came here. I went to a job that we had done, this bathroom interior, stone walls. I got called in to come look at it because one of our crews is there and one of our guys was managing it, but they wanted it a little more detailed. So I pull into the street this job is on, and I'm saying, oh my goodness, my GPS says it's 250 feet down on the left. I said, we did this job. We did this stone job when I used to lay stone, pull up. And it's this incredible experience of going back to 1984. I asked him, do you remember when this house was built? I didn't remember the date. It was over 30 years ago. I was laying stone with one helper, and I was in awe. I mean,
It was good work.
it was beautiful.
That's good.
But it was just a little affirming
Yeah, let me
moment.
show you something.
Oh, I forgot about that job long ago. And
That's so
it's right
beautiful.
there in
So this is
Chapel Hill.
another homeowner. This is a new homeowner in a home that
it
you
wasn't
worked on
the
before.
original
Oh
one,
my
and they were
goodness.
doing
They
this
didn't know it was
remodel.
your work.
No.
That was the secret little
And I
inside.
told them, and I gave them the history of the stone, where it came from, and a little bunch of details. They loved it. They absolutely
How
loved it.
great. And yeah,
That
God,
just was such. I felt like
that's a gift.
what is the odds
What a
of that?
precious gift. Yeah, what a precious gift that is.
Yeah,
Good.
it's almost like the present you had an opportunity to affirm the younger you, you know?
much younger. Yeah.
I know I've written a blog about it and shared it from the stage at Heart of a Warrior weekends, and I went trout fishing at the local stream up in Philadelphia, outside of Philadelphia where I'm from, where I used to go with my father. And my father was in the battle with brain cancer, and he would die maybe 2 months later. He couldn't go fishing with me, but I went to the same holes that we always went to. And Dad didn't eat fish, but my mom liked when I'd bring trout home and I'd, skin them and we'd eat, and the house would smell like onions and butter and trout. And it was just such a glorious celebration. But this particular day, I went in the morning and, for an hour or two, and I didn't catch anything all day, and it's time to go home. And in fact, we might have been going to church with my mom and dad at 9 o'clock, so I went early. So I'm walking out, and I don't have any. And I said, Lord, just one last cast, just one into this hole. That wasn't even a very attractive hole. If I were a trout, I wouldn't have been there. But I put it into this hole, and you know what happened. Out comes this trout, hits my lure, and I've got it. And I'm, let me get him on the land. Get him on the land. He's flopping all over, and I hug him, and I kiss him. Thank you, Lord. I have tears streaming down my face. I march into the house. Mom says proverbial, did you get any? Yeah, I got one. And I was just so happy. We cooked it up. It was almost like communion. It was just glorious.
Wow.
Which is just a wonderful story that brings tears to my eyes. But that night, some people came and visited my parents, friends of the family. In fact, one was a deacon at a local church. And I told the story that, on my last cast, I caught one just to celebrate, Dad. And the woman looked at me and said, God doesn't care about you catching trout. Your dad's here dying, and, we're here, trying to support him. And you think catching a trout has anything to do with it. I didn't say anything. I was so offended. I was so surprised. And, I've never really I never would share that with them, but that's not true. That's a lie. That stonework that day, yesterday, for this podcast, that's what that was for. That Heart of a Warrior was for this. That trout, 15 years ago was to celebrate my dad with my mom. No question about it. A good father does that. If he would send his son to die for you, what else wouldn't he give you?
Yeah, wouldn't he give you? That's right.
You want your computer, a car, a trout, a fish, a stone? He gave you his son. He'll give you everything else. Good father.
Yeah, that's good.
I love that.
That's a good place for us to just take a quick break and come back in just a few minutes. Hey, friends and allies of Exploring More podcast. We wanted to bring some attention to some of our free downloadable resources on our Zoweh website. First, there's a 14-day devotional on being fathered by God. This is the same devotional that you can get a PDF download on our website. You also can find on the YouVersion Bible app. Also, the 14-day devotional on the Heart of a Warrior, another great resource to walk through with men or in your own time alone with God. The last free download that we want to draw attention to is the Biblical Theology of the Heart. Is the redeemed heart good? Is this piece of equipment that is so vital to living in the kingdom, is it good or is it not? Download the Biblical Theology of the Heart to find out more. You can find these 3 resources and many other free downloads and free audio files on our website at www.zoweh.org. Yeah, let me read kind of in the spirit of what we're talking about. This will be really, I think, appropriate. I'm going to read something from Hebrews 12, and then and this is from the Message version. Just you guys just respond. What comes up in your heart in this idea of being fathered and what it looks like? Hebrews 12, 4 through 12 in the Message says, "Or have you forgotten how good parents treat children, and that God regards you as his children? My dear child, don't shrug off God's discipline, but don't be crushed by it either. It's the child he loves that he disciplines. The child he embraces, he also corrects. God is educating you. That's why you must never drop out. He's treating you as dear children. This trouble you're in isn't punishment. It's training, the normal experience of children. Only irresponsible parents leave children to fend for themselves. Would you prefer an irresponsible God? We respect our own parents for training and not spoiling us. So why not embrace God's training so we can truly live? While we were children, our parents did what seemed best to them. But God is doing what is best for us, training us to live God's holy best. At the time, discipline isn't much fun. It always feels like it's going against the grain. Later, of course, it pays off handsomely, for it's the well-trained who find themselves mature in their relationship with God."
That's really good.
Where does that take you in the explanation of this good father, gifts, training? It's affirming so much of this, but anything in there that stands out, any piece of that you just like, oh, I needed to hear that, or that's really good, it reminds me of something?
Men, I have kids, children, they're not kids, 29, 26, 22, 8, and 7. And so I can see the different facets of discipline, of training, and, the older ones, what actually they learned, what they were well trained to, what they weren't. And then the importance of training my littles, the 8, and 7, and what's important. And I try to let everyone know the gift, the training, the purpose of the discipline. I need to teach you, it's my job, God gave me this job, to teach you, my youngest son, how to listen to your mother, at least by the second time she asks you to do something, or how to clean your plate, because that's what we do as part of our family. And you could, take any number of training issues, but I try to explain that so they know. And they may not know now at 8, but as I look at Sarah, Shelby, and Sean, my older kids, they know. Mm-hmm. And the one training that I didn't get, because I refused it, was to how to change the oil of a car. Esty, I know you're a car guy. Dad didn't teach me that. He did teach me how to trout fish. Mm-hmm. He taught me how to hit a baseball, and he taught me how to shoot a basketball. And that training was so important. I treasure that, especially now that he's not here. Mm. I see the guys changing oil, and my sons don't know how, and I don't either, but they'll know how to trout fish. But whatever your father taught you, either by strict instruction or by just modeling it, is so important and so deep and so permanent. A permanent marker on your heart. Especially if you have a good father, your earthly father. But then, I'll stop there with comparing it to God.
I love the passage comparing the two. I love that about it, that here's, if good parents parent this way, stand back here, let's listen to how God parents. And there's discipline, there's training, and in the context, like you're talking about, of love. It's in the context of love. And you were talking about your son earlier, and you said something I want to come back to, because you want to tell him some things that he doesn't yet know. Right. And you're a dad, you're a father. Well, this Hebrews tells us, let's elevate, let's take that to God. What's God doing for you? And when he whispers to you that phrase, he's saying, do you think you know all of this? Right. Do you think you got all this down? Really? Mm-hmm. And so it's good for you to be able to connect those pieces in that moment, and and how being fathered. I think the first times this starts to happen can be a little confusing if you're not prepared. Just like a lot of first times, you're not sure what's going on. You're not sure what God's up to in this? And there can be some hard things in life, and there can be some other things that are really, really beautiful, but do we even have the skill or the desire or the want to take them to God and take him up on this fathering idea? Do you remember the first time or the first times you started to even go down this path as a possibility of God's provision and protection in fathering you?
Well, yeah, when you think about it, we're talking about a pretty radical idea that God is personally involved with teaching us, training us, helping us. And so it wasn't really on my radar much until we started in this message, this idea of intimacy with God, and that it is available. You know, so much of my journey in my faith was more about trying to figure it out myself just by reading the scripture and not trying to understand it and trying to follow it and live by that. And one of the things that I remember stood out to me so much in the beginning of that was reading through Proverbs. And there's a lot of references, multiple references to the self-confident fool, which I didn't want to be. And I knew there in certain areas of my life where I was overconfident or I wasn't asking questions. I was just making declarations and giving lectures, whether it's in parenting or whatever. And I just think that this idea that we're offering and suggesting that folks that are listening to that would explore is God is so much more present and vocal and desiring to help intervene into some of our messes. When we get in a mess, we want to run and hide, and fix it ourselves first. But I think that we're learning first place to go is what's going on here. Why am I feeling this way? Or why am I so angry? Or why did I say that? Or, and that can bear a lot of fruit.
Those don't sound like prayers, but those are exactly the kind of prayer life. What is this? What's going on?
Right.
What are you up to here? What is this I'm feeling? Those kind of questions. We think of prayer in a very different category. We do now. We think of it very differently now, like what you're saying, that there is this asking questions, considering I don't know what's going on. What does it look like to live a little slower and be able to come to God with questions? I don't know about you guys. I think it's I would bet heavy that it's true for you. When my kids come to me and ask for my help, I help them.
Oh, I'm overjoyed.
I'm thrilled.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll navigate it together. We'll figure this out. I'll be with you. That's my answer. That's my posture. And you're talking about the radical idea of what if that was the Father's posture to us too?
Yeah, it ties right into the scripture you shared, Hebrews 12. The part that stuck out to me as you read that, Michael, was the child he embraces, he also corrects. No one wants to be corrected by someone standing over them, with something in his hand, going to whack him across the knuckles when he makes a mistake. And as you get some mileage behind you in life, whatever mileage that might be, everybody's a little bit different. You understand that you can't have too much embrace, and it can't all be, love all the time in that sense. But the embrace combined with the correction, lovingly shared, is the most loving thing a parent can do. Yeah. So it's that embrace. I'm going to hold you. I know that hurt. I know that was terrible. I know it's a hard thing you're going through. Now we can talk about how it can go differently next time.
Right.
And the consequence, I know that you can't have the iPad for the weekend because that's the consequence. That's the rule we made.
Sure.
And I know that frustrates you. And I know it's really hard. And I won't be with you all weekend. And Monday morning, you'll earn it back. But that's a real consequence. And it's real life. Yeah. And gravity's not something we can change. And our rules, because you're crying and you feel bad and it's hard and you didn't like it, I know. That's the lesson. I'm not going to leave you. I love you. You can't make me not love you. But by me administering that consequence, that is loving. And that's what we were talking about earlier off the mics, about how sometimes love, we lose the other side of love, which is holding you responsible for your responsibilities, as part of the relationship and the rules we've set up. Rules aren't there to restrict you and confine you. They're there to protect and keep you safe.
Right.
Yeah, there's
It's
freedom.
not, don't do this because I don't want you. Don't do this because it might hurt you.
Yeah. Children that are not disciplined. If you ask an adult who, as a child, had no discipline whatsoever, was kind of given free reign of the household, do whatever they want to do, they feel the most unloved because their parents, in their eyes, did not care.
Yeah. There's more to talk about for sure, man. And we're gonna wrap this up and then jump in. I'll tell you where we're going so the listeners can stay with us if they want to in the next session 4. But what is this? You mentioned Proverbs earlier. Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way they should go, and when they are older, they will not depart from it. So we're going to unpack that in the next session. So, man, good to be talking about important things with you, my friends and brothers. And we hope our listeners know that they can catch all kinds of Zoweh information and direction and encouragement at our website. We'll look forward to catching up with them in the next session on being fathered. We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoweh.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoweh on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoweh on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.